fathomevents.com.
Hey everybody, I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Welcome to this month's TCM Spotlight Series. Each Tuesday night, we're bringing you films from one of the 5 directors featured in Mark Harris's book, 5 Came Back. Capra, Weiler, Ford, Stevens, and tonight, John Huston. They all signed up to make movies to help the war effort. Sometimes it was documentary storytelling, sometimes it was outright propaganda, usually a little bit of both. Author and film historian Mark Harris is back. Mark, welcome.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for being here. Up next, John Huston's documentary, Report from the Aleutians, with narration by John Huston, and then at the end, his father, Walter Huston. John Huston narrated all 3 of the war documentaries that he directed.
Yeah, he did. Huston really liked writing, and he, as we know from later movies, really liked performing. He had a very, singular, strange, mellifluous voice, and I think he thought it worked well in these movies. And this one, Report from the Aleutians, was the first of 3 major documentary assignments that he fulfilled during and after the war.
And people will decide for themselves, of course, but as I was listening, initially I think, oh, this narration is terrible, and then within 3 or 4 minutes, I think, I like this. This is good. He had a very distinct style.
Yeah, it kind of seduces you, and I think Huston knew that, especially if the movie was allowed to run long enough, and there was real dispute over what the running time of this movie could be. I think he knew if it were allowed to run long enough, it would grow on you, and you'd get used to it, and you'd get the point and the rhythm of what he was trying to do.
Let's talk about length of these movies, because it matters. The initial assignment was that these little documentaries would run before feature films in theaters, and that's how they thought people would maintain an interest in them. Huston wanted it as long as he wanted it because he was the director and he had things to say. How did he win this fight to make this long enough? It's not that long, but it's still, I think it's nearly 40 minutes.
Right. Report from the Aleutians was a movie that Huston took several months to film while he was up there, and the government then kind of lost interest in, because the Aleutians wasn't a major battlefront. Then, when we retook the Aleutians, suddenly there was great interest in getting the movie done, but they wanted it much, much shorter. So Huston brought the press in. He made sure that influential critics in New York got to see his version of the movie, and he knew that they would write pieces advancing exactly his argument, which is an important piece of news and information about an important American site is being withheld from the public because of the Army not understanding what movies should be.
This movie, Report from the Aleutians, is almost like 2 movies. At first, it's these soldiers in a remote outpost and how they fill their time waiting for mail. And then it changes very much in the second half when they go on the attack against the Japanese. And what we're going to see is legitimate battle footage, but it isn't the actual battle that retook the islands.
Right. That happened long after Huston and his filmmaking crew had left the Aleutians. But I think, you know how sometimes they say filmmakers will alternate like a good business project with a passion project, and it's one for them, one for me? I think Report from the Aleutians is sort of like one for them, one for me within the same movie. Like, the first half is really the movie that Huston wanted to make. It's an interesting movie about boredom, about waiting, about long, long days where there's nothing to do but wonder if the enemy is going to strike or if this is the time, but what do you do while you're waiting? And then the second movie is, as Huston understood it, the kind of fulfillment of his propaganda assignment. That's what the second half of Report from the Aleutians looks and plays like.
All right, Mark, thanks. That's an interesting way to look at it. Stay tuned for Huston's film, which will then follow up with another private snafu animated short. But first, from 1943, produced by the U.S. Army Signal Corps, John Huston's Report from the Aleutians.